Ford had acquired Jaguar and put it into part of their Premier Automotive Group. And what Jaguar did was took the second-generation Ford Mondeo, fairly heavily reworked. It isn't just an identical car. It seemed to make its way onto many worst cars of all time lists.
Sometimes, a car can capture your heart at first sight. A sleek bodyline, futuristic styling, or bold design cues can make you think you've stumbled across something truly special. Over the decades, automakers have rolled out plenty of vehicles that turned heads in showrooms, graced magazine covers, and even earned cult followings for their looks. But, as every seasoned car enthusiast knows, appearances can be deceiving. Beneath those stylish exteriors often lurked disappointing engines, poor reliability, cheap interiors, or downright frustrating driving experiences. And for many buyers, the dream quickly turned into regret. In this video, we're counting down 12 cars that looked undeniably cool, but ended up being terrible once you got behind the wheel or tried living with them. From futuristic flops to design-driven disasters, these cars prove that good looks don't always equal good performance. Number 12. Pontiac Aztek. The Pontiac Aztek is one of the most infamous examples of how design can go horribly wrong. When it debuted in 2000, Pontiac marketed it as a bold, adventurous crossover meant to capture younger buyers who wanted something rugged yet stylish. On paper, the idea wasn't bad. An SUV that combined family practicality with an active lifestyle. But the execution was nothing short of a disaster. The Aztek's angular, over-designed body panels, awkward proportions, and cluttered front fascia made it one of the most unattractive cars ever sold in the US. Despite being aimed at a youthful crowd, it looked more like a mishmash of design committee leftovers. Even though it offered some neat features, like an optional built-in tent and cooler, the drive-in experience was uninspiring. The underpowered V6 engine, cheap interior plastics, and clunky ride meant it didn't live up to its adventurous promise. Pontiac thought the Aztek would rejuvenate the brand, but instead, it became a cultural punchline. Its poor sales contributed to the downfall of Pontiac itself. Ironically, the Aztek gained a second life years later as Walter White's car in Breaking Bad, where its "so bad it's good" image made sense. Still, despite the cool attempt, this car ended up being terrible in all the ways that mattered. Number 11. Delorean DMC12. Few cars have ever looked as futuristic and stylish as the Delorean DMC12. With its stainless steel body panels and iconic gull-wing doors, it looked like something pulled straight out of a sci-fi movie, long before Back to the Future turned it into a pop culture legend. When it first hit the market in the early 1980s, people were dazzled by its radical styling, thinking it was a true sports car that could rival Ferrari or Porsche. But under all that stainless steel glamour was a car that simply couldn't deliver. The DeLorean was powered by a weak 2.85-liter V6 that produced only around 130 horsepower. Despite its exotic looks, it was sluggish, with disappointing acceleration that left drivers underwhelmed. The build quality was also poor, with uneven panel gaps and reliability problems. To make matters worse, the car's heavy weight further killed performance and handling. John DeLorean's ambitious dream quickly crumbled as sales slumped, and the company went bankrupt after just a few years. While the DMC-12 has since earned cult status thanks to Hollywood, the reality for owners was far less glamorous. It was a beautiful shell, hiding a mediocre, frustrating driving experience. Proof that cool looks alone can't save a flawed car. Number 10. Chevrolet SSR. At first glance, the Chevrolet SSR looked like something out of a hot rodder's fantasy. Introduced in the early 2000s, it combined the retro charm of a 1950s pickup with the sleek curves of a convertible roadster. With its power-retractable hardtop roof and bold styling, it turned heads wherever it went. Chevy marketed it as a one-of-a-kind blend of utility, style, and fun. A truck that could do it all while looking cool doing it. But beneath the flashy exterior, the SSR was deeply flawed. Its early models came with a weak 5.3-liter V8 that produced just 300 horsepower, which was nowhere near enough for a vehicle that weighed over 2 tons. Later models were upgraded to a 6.0-liter engine with more power, but by then, the damage was already done. The handling was clumsy, the ride was heavy, and the bed was so impractical that calling it a truck was almost a joke. The interior didn't help either. Cheap plastics, awkward ergonomics, and limited space made it uncomfortable for everyday driving. Despite its cool looks, buyers quickly realized that the SSR was more of a novelty than a useful or enjoyable vehicle. Sales tanked, and Chevrolet quietly pulled the plug after only a few years. Today, it's remembered more as a curiosity than a success story, proof that good design can't fix bad execution. Number 9. Chrysler PT Cruiser. When the Chrysler PT Cruiser hit the streets in 2000, it made a big splash. With its retro-inspired design, rounded fenders, and tall roofline, it stood out in a sea of bland, compact cars. Chrysler marketed it as a stylish throwback to the 1930s and 40s, and for a moment, people loved it. It sold well initially, largely because it looked unique and offered flexible interior space with fold-flat seats and a roomy cabin. But the excitement faded quickly once owners spent time with it. The base engine was a gutless 2.4-liter four-cylinder that produced a meager 150 horsepower. The driving experience was uninspiring: sluggish acceleration, vague steering, and a noisy ride. Build quality was another sore spot, with cheap plastics throughout the cabin and questionable durability. While Chrysler tried to keep interest alive with turbocharged versions and special trims, they couldn't mask the car's fundamental shortcomings. To make matters worse, the PT Cruiser's once fresh styling aged rapidly. What looked quirky and fun at the turn of the millennium soon looked awkward and outdated by the mid-2000s. By the time production ended in 2010, its reputation had shifted from cool retro cruiser to rental car joke. The PT Cruiser is a textbook example of a car that looked cool for a brief moment in time, but ultimately proved terrible to own and drive. Number 8. Ford Thunderbird, 2002 revival. The Ford Thunderbird has a legendary place in American automotive history. The original models of the 1950s were iconic, sleek, stylish, and packed with personality. So when Ford announced a revival of the Thunderbird in 2002, excitement was sky high. The retro design looked promising, with lines that echoed the classic T-Bird while adding modern flair. It seemed like the perfect blend of nostalgia and new technology. Unfortunately, the reality didn't live up to the hype. While the 2002 Thunderbird looked sharp on the outside, its performance was anything but thrilling. The car was built on the same platform as the Lincoln LS, and it carried a heavy curb weight that dulled its handling. The 3.9-liter V8 under the hood produced 280 horsepower, which sounded respectable. but in practice, it felt sluggish and uninspired. This was supposed to be a sports luxury convertible, but it drove more like a soft cruiser. The interior also failed to impress. Instead of premium materials worthy of a revival, the cabin was filled with bland plastics and uninspired design choices. Worse, the car was expensive compared to rivals that offered far better performance and quality. While it grabbed attention at first, sales plummeted after the initial rush, and Ford quietly discontinued it just a few years later. What should have been a glorious return for the Thunderbird instead became a reminder that nostalgia can't carry a car if the substance isn't there. Number 7. Cadillac Alante. In the late 1980s, Cadillac wanted to reinvent itself as a world-class luxury brand that could compete with Mercedes and Jaguar. Their solution was the Cadillac Alante, a stylish two-seater roadster with sleek Italian design. To make it stand out, Cadillac partnered with Pininfarina in Italy to design and build the body. The shells were then flown across the Atlantic in specially modified Boeing 747s, where final assembly took place in Michigan. On paper, it sounded like a masterpiece in the making. The Alante certainly looked the part, with its clean lines and European flair. But under the hood, it was a different story. The early models were powered by a 4.1-liter V8 that produced just 170 horsepower, woefully inadequate for a car that was supposed to compete with powerful European rivals. Performance was sluggish, and handling was far from sporty. Later versions improved slightly with better engines, but by then, the reputation was already damaged. The car was also plagued by reliability issues and high maintenance costs. The transatlantic production process added enormous expense, making the Alante overpriced compared to competitors that offered far better performance and quality. Buyers expecting a true luxury sports car were sorely disappointed. Despite its good looks and ambitious intentions, the Alante was a sales flop, discontinued after just 6 years. Today, it's remembered more as an expensive experiment than a true Cadillac success. Number 6. AMC Matador Coupe. The AMC Matador Coupe, launched in the mid-1970s, was a bold attempt by American Motors to compete with the stylish personal luxury coupes of the era. Designed with swooping body lines, dramatic front-end styling, and a long, low profile, the Matador looked like something futuristic compared to AMC's usually conservative lineup. Its design even drew attention on the NASCAR track, where it looked aggressive and competitive. For a moment, it seemed AMC might have a winner on its hands. But while it looked sharp, the Matador fell apart in nearly every other category. Build quality was a constant issue, with flimsy interiors, rattling panels, and poor durability. The driving experience was equally underwhelming. The base engines lacked power, and even the larger V8s felt sluggish thanks to the car's weight and sloppy suspension. Fuel economy was dismal, which was a huge problem during the oil crisis of the 1970s. Customers who expected the Matador Coupe to match the quality of rivals like the Chevy Monte Carlo or Ford Torino were sorely disappointed. Reviews were harsh, sales were weak, and AMC's already shaky reputation took another hit. While its styling may have caught the eye, the ownership experience was a nightmare of poor reliability and high running costs. Ultimately, the Matador Coupe is remembered as another example of AMC's overreach. A car that looked cool in the showroom, but proved terrible in the real world. Number 5. Dodge Stealth. In the early 1990s, the Dodge Stealth looked like it could take on the world. With its sleek, aerodynamic shape, pop-up headlights, and futuristic curves, it screamed performance. Sold alongside its Japanese twin, the Mitsubishi 3000 GT, the Stealth was marketed as an affordable sports car that combined exotic styling with cutting-edge technology. On paper, it had everything it needed to succeed. But the reality didn't quite match the promise. While the top VR4 version packed twin turbos, all-wheel drive, and active aerodynamics, most buyers ended up with the base models. These looked just as sporty, but came with underpowered V6 engines that didn't live up to the car's aggressive design. Even the higher trims suffered from complexity. The car was stuffed with advanced tech like electronically adjustable suspension and active spoilers. But these features often broke down and were expensive to repair. The Stealth also carried a hefty price tag, putting it out of reach for many younger enthusiasts who were drawn to its looks. Worse, it was overshadowed by rivals like the Toyota Supra, Mazda RX-7, and Nissan 300ZX, which offered purer driving experiences. By the late 1990s, the Dodge Stealth had faded into obscurity, remembered more as a flashy experiment than a true sports car legend. It's a classic case of a car that looked fast and exciting, but left most owners frustrated. Number 4. Subaru SVX. When Subaru introduced the SVX in the early 1990s, it looked like nothing else on the road. Designed by the legendary Giorgetto Giugiaro, the SVX featured futuristic styling with flowing body lines and its most distinctive feature, unique window-within-a-window side glass. It had the appearance of a sleek Grand Tourer, a car that looked ready to challenge European luxury coupes while bringing Subaru into a more upscale market. But the cool looks hid a disappointing reality. The SVX came with a 3.3-liter flat-six engine that produced 230 horsepower, which sounded solid for the time. Unfortunately, it was paired only with a sluggish 4-speed automatic transmission. Enthusiasts looking for a sporty drive were immediately turned off by the lack of a manual option. The car was also heavy, so despite its power, performance was underwhelming. Reliability became another sore point. The automatic transmissions were notorious for failing, often at low mileage, leading to huge repair bills. Add in poor fuel economy and a high price tag, and the SVX quickly became a tough sell. While it looked futuristic and promised big things, the ownership experience was frustrating and expensive. Sales were weak, and Subaru quietly discontinued it after just a few years. Today, the SVX is remembered as a stylish failure, a car that looked like it belonged in the future but couldn't handle the present. Number 3. Volkswagen Phaeton. When Volkswagen unveiled the Phaeton in the early 2000s, it turned heads with its understated but elegant design. At first glance, it looked like a sleek, well-proportioned luxury sedan, subtle enough to blend in, but with an aura of sophistication that could rival a Mercedes or BMW. For VW, the Phaeton was meant to prove they could build a true flagship vehicle, one that combined style, comfort, and cutting-edge engineering. But the Phaeton was a classic case of ambition outweighing reality. While it looked classy and packed advanced features like adaptive air suspension, heated and cooled seats, and even a cabin designed to withstand extreme temperatures, it was still a Volkswagen. Buyers willing to spend luxury car money didn't want a VW badge on their hood, no matter how cool the car looked. Prestige mattered in that market. and the Phaeton simply didn't have it. The driving experience didn't help either. Despite sharing components with the Bentley Continental, the Phaeton was heavy, overly complicated, and extremely expensive to maintain. Repairs were nightmarish due to its complexity, and depreciation was brutal. Owners quickly discovered that behind the elegant exterior lay a financial black hole. In the end, the Phaeton flopped in the U.S. market and lingered only in small numbers elsewhere. It's now remembered as a car that looked refined and impressive, but in reality was a terrible value proposition that highlighted how looks and features alone can't overcome brand perception. Number 2. Jaguar X-Type. When Jaguar launched the X-Type in 2001, it was supposed to be the brand's entry-level luxury sedan, a stylish way to bring new buyers into the Jaguar family. With its chrome grille, graceful curves, and classic Jaguar cues, it looked like a shrunken version of the brand's elegant XJ sedans. At a glance, it had the right mix of heritage and style to attract younger drivers who wanted a taste of Jaguar prestige at a lower price point. But the X-Type turned out to be one of Jaguar's biggest missteps. Underneath its attractive skin, it was basically a rebadged Ford Mondeo, sharing much of its platform and components. Enthusiasts and critics quickly realized it lacked the refinement and uniqueness expected from a Jaguar. The base models came with weak V6 engines that didn't match the sporty looks, and even the all-wheel drive versions felt uninspired on the road. The interior, while dressed up with wood trim and leather, suffered from cheap parts and Ford-grade quality issues. Reliability was another nightmare. Owners complained about constant breakdowns, electrical gremlins, and costly repairs. Worse, the X-Type was priced higher than it deserved, making it a poor value compared to its German rivals from BMW and Audi. Instead of strengthening Jaguar's reputation, the X-Type diluted it. Sales were weak, and critics slammed it as one of the worst attempts at badge engineering in modern times. While it looked every bit like a classy compact Jag, the reality was a disappointing and unreliable sedan that left many owners regretting their choice. Number 1. Plymouth Prowler. Few cars have ever made a bolder first impression than the Plymouth Prowler. When it rolled out in the late 1990s, it looked like nothing else on the road. With its hot rod-inspired design, open front wheels, and aggressive stance, it turned heads instantly. The Prowler was Chrysler's attempt to show off its design creativity, and in that sense, it succeeded. It was undeniably cool to look at. But as soon as people got behind the wheel, the disappointment set in. Despite its wild looks, the Prowler was powered by a modest 3.5-liter V6 that produced just 214 horsepower. For a car that looked like a custom-built street rod, performance was underwhelming at best. There was no big V8, no thunderous exhaust note, and no muscle to match the appearance. Practicality was another joke. The car had almost no trunk space, so Chrysler sold an optional trailer to give owners somewhere to put their luggage. The interior felt cheap and basic, especially for a car with such a premium price tag. Reliability wasn't stellar either, with plenty of complaints about build quality. The Prowler drew crowds wherever it went, but most people admired it from the sidewalk rather than the driver's seat. Buyers who took the plunge quickly realized that beneath the dramatic looks was a car that failed to deliver on its promise. Today, it's remembered as one of the most striking automotive letdowns of its era. proof that cool styling alone can't save a fundamentally flawed vehicle. Cars have always been as much about emotion as engineering. A striking design can make people fall in love instantly, but as we've seen, style doesn't guarantee substance. From the Plymouth Prowler's flashy hot rod looks to the Jaguar X-Type's faux luxury, these cars proved that beauty can sometimes mask disappointment. For many buyers, the excitement of owning something cool quickly gave way to frustration, breakdowns, or lackluster performance. Still, they remain fascinating chapters in automotive history, reminders of how risky it can be when form takes priority over function. So, which of these cars do you think was the biggest letdown? Or did you actually own one and have a different experience? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your stories. And if you enjoyed this countdown, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the cars that made history, for better or worse.